one comment about D2L quizzes and exams. Even though I have them set so that you will get automatic feedback, that's so that you see what the correct answers and such are. If your spelling is wrong, etc., that's not a concern. Even though it might show that you got 5 out of 10 or something like that. Every exam, every quiz, I go over. So I'll go through, and if the content of your response is correct, the point is added, right? So what immediately shows up is not what goes into my gradebook. I do not use the D2L gradebook. You can't check it via that, okay? Because I've already gotten email questions and such about that. Okay. We're supposed to do Faulkner's barn burning. Well, we were supposed to do part of it on Friday, but we were behind. We're going to try to do all of it today. I don't know that we'll get through all of it, but we'll see. Very, very brief biographical comment about Faulkner. He's a son of the Deep South. Okay? Born in the 19th century, dies in the late to mid 20th century, early 1960s, if I remember correctly. Wrote several novels, earned the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1950 for those novels. Tried to make it take a turn as a screenwriter in LA. Didn't really succeed. Wrote a couple of novels to try and make a quick buck and a lot of bucks, what are called potboiler novels, which are the kind of novels you see at the checkout line in grocery stores and stuff. Didn't really succeed at that, but he's become acknowledged as one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. One of the hallmarks of his writing are long, convoluted sentences. The opening paragraph, for example, the second sentence that begins, "the boy," doesn't end until the word blood, 4 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph. Okay, it is very, very long. Most of his novels and stories are set in this fictitious county that he creates, Yoknapatawpha County, Mississippi. Okay, and that's just because he kind of wants an imaginary location that he can throw the action in, and it therefore doesn't draw attention to a real location. Okay, most of his stories are set late 19th century to fairly early 20th century. Trying to think of the latest one that I have read, how far into the 20th century goes. 1930s, maybe 1940s. But most of them are set like the 1890s to the 1920s. And again, primarily in the Deep South. A couple of them, he has characters who live up in New York for a while. It's like they escape from the South and then they're drawn back. One idea, theme, that runs throughout his novels is the pull, P-U-L-L, of family. The influence of family. And that can be the influence of one's ancestors on oneself, or the pull of, father to son, father to child, mother to child, brother to brother, that kind of thing. I mean, after all, one of the horrendous things about the Civil War was what? And it's involved in that first word. Civil. Who is a civil war between? Us. Between the South and the North, and we know multiple instances where you had one brother fighting another brother. It doesn't get any more primal than, you're back in just outside the Garden of Eden there with Cain and Abel, right? So, you're going to hear this phrase mentioned 2 or 3 times. the old fierce pull of blood in this story, okay? And I'm going to throw it out right now. This story has offensive terms for a 21st century audience. They weren't offensive necessarily in, what year is this? 1939. Okay? It's the language used every day in 1939 and more specifically in 1890s Deep South. Slavery is done and over with, blacks are freed, but still not treated well, especially in places like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, where you had the Jim Crow laws and all those kinds of things. All right? Title, Barn Burning. Notice it's not burning barns. There's a difference there. Barn burning. So is it barn burning or barn burning? Like the act of burning barns. Listen, just listen to this, and I'm already behind, to this introductory paragraph. And then we're going to talk about it for a couple of minutes. Listen to it and pay attention to the descriptions of what the boy is feeling, experiencing, etc. The store in which the justice of the peace's court was sitting smelled of cheese. So we immediately get, what's the smell of cheese? Okay, this is unwrapped cheese. This is not cheese wrapped in a plastic wrapper like you get at the grocery store today. This is raw cheese. It's got a wax outside, but the rest of it's open. We're not told what kind of cheese. Is this cheddar cheese? Is it mozzarella cheese? Is it whatever? Okay, but it smells of cheese. Now, I'm not going to interrupt you. The boy, crouched on his nail keg at the back of the crowded room, knew he smelled cheese and more. From where he sat, he could see the ranked shelves close packed with the solid, squat, dynamic shapes of tin cans, whose labels his stomach read, not from the lettering, which meant nothing to his mind, but from the scarlet devils and the silver curve of fish. This, the cheese which he knew he smelled, and the hermetic meat which his intestines believed he smelled, coming in intermittent gusts, momentary and brief, between the other constant one. Lost my place. The smell incensed just a little of fear, because mostly of despair and grief, the old fierce pull of blood. He could not see the table where the justice sat, and before which his father and his father's enemy, our enemy, he thought in that despair, Aaron, mine and his and both, he's my father, stood, but he could hear them, the two of them, that is, because his father had said no word yet. What does that long middle sentence tell us about the boy? We've been told several things. We've not been told directly. We've been told indirectly. How does he know there is fish in the cans? If it's in the cans, and the cans are sealed because we're told they're hermetically sealed, you can't smell it. Go to the store, grab a can of tuna fish, you can't smell it. Hopefully, if you can, put it back. It's bad. The cans have symbols on them. You know, the other day we talked about emblems. Like a fish. That's what tells him there's tuna fish in there. Notice what we're told he cannot do. He can't read the cans. The kid's illiterate. He's unable to read. Okay? And we're told his stomach tells him there's fish in there. Of the tin cans whose labels his stomach read, not from the lettering, which meant nothing to his mind, but from the scarlet devils and the silver curve of fish. This, the cheese which he knew he smelled, and hermetic meat, which his intestines believe he smelled. Why do his intestines believe he smells meat? Notice, his intestines. What's going on in his gut? It's rumbling. He's hungry. kid is sitting there. He sees all this food stacked on the shelves, and he's hungry. Okay? So he's illiterate, he's hungry, which is probably telling us what about his socioeconomic status? He's poor. We're going to find out in just a few moments that they are poor and how poor kind of they are. What's the setting? Is it just a country store? I mean, ostensibly, yes. But the country store has been transformed into what? It's a courthouse at this point. Because there is a sitting judge, the justice of the peace. Who are the combatants in this court? Because every court involves combatants. We don't call them that. We call them the accused. Okay? We have a prosecutor and defense attorney. That's conflict. Who's being accused of something? The boy's father. How do we know? His father's enemy. Our enemy. Parentheses, italics, the narrator is taking us inside the boy's mind. This is what the boy thinks. Okay? So at the very beginning, sounds like we have an omniscient narrator. We don't know if the omniscient is fully omniscient or if this is limited omniscient. Maybe we only get taken inside the boy's mind. If it's only the boy's thoughts we hear, the narrator is limited. So it's limited omniscient. We don't know that yet. We might hear inside other people's minds later. Okay? Notice the smells, so to speak, of fish and cheese and such are intermittent gusts, momentary and brief, between the other constant one. The other constant gusts of what? The smell and sense just a little of fear. Can you smell fear? Dogs can, we're told. Which is why you put on a brave face when a dog's running up to it. You turn and run, the dog's all over you. You make yourself really big and lunge at it, most dogs are going to back off. I wouldn't suggest doing that with a Rottweiler. When I used to run, I had to carry pepper spray because that house had 3 Rottweilers that would come out across the street. Just a little fear because mostly of despair and grief, the old fierce pull of blood. The word pull there is meant to link to the other things in the room that are kind of pulling at this kid. The food. The implication is he's constantly hungry, but he also is constantly pulled by blood. How so? Ourn, mine and his both. Sticking up with his dad, sticking with his father. Okay? So then we actually hear somebody speak. But what proof have you, Mr. Harris? I told you, the hog got into my corn. Caught it up, sent it back to him. Had no fence. I told him so, I warned him. Next time, put the hog in my pen. So a hog has gotten out once. The next time, it's gotten out twice. When he came to get it, I gave him enough wire to patch up his pen. The next time, third time this man's hog has gotten out, I put the hog up and kept it. I rode down to his house, saw the wire I gave him, rolled on the ground. Told him he could have the hog when he paid me $1 pound fee. That evening, nigger came with the $1 and got the hog. Okay? So what are we told about Mr. Harris? Is Mr. Harris a mean, rotten, dirty SOB? He's not. How do we know? There's one little detail in there, I think, that proves to us that he's not. What did he do for the man whose hog keeps getting out? What did he give the man? Okay, he gives him his hog back. What else does he do? He gives him fencing wire to fix the fence. He gives it, he doesn't sell it to him. He gives it to him. That's an act of kindness. It's an act of charity. What could he do? Your hog keeps getting in my stuff. Bacon. That's what he could do. So the man sends a former slave with $1 to get the hog back. He said, the former slave that is sent, he says to the man who's found the hog and who had the hog, he said to tell you wood and hay can burn. I said, what? That's what he said to tell you. Wood and hay can burn. What does that sound like? Is that just a statement of fact? Yes, obviously it is. Wood and hay can both burn. Yeah, that's a warning or threat. That evening, his barn burns. I got the stock out, whatever the stock is, cattle, horses, sheep, goats. Where's the nigger? You got him? You got that guy who warned you? No, never seen him before. But that's not proof. Why isn't it proof? What has Mr. Harris just offered as testimony? If you've ever watched any crime shows, and there's a court scene, in every show, someone will try to do this, and the judge will slam them down. It's hearsay testimony. The person telling this, Mr. Harris, cannot repeat word for word what the other person said and offer that as testimony. You got to get it from, so to speak, the horse's mouth. You got to get it straight from the person who actually said it. Don't you see that's not proof? Well, get that boy up here then, says Mr. Harris. He knows. And for a moment, the boy thought too that the man meant his older brother. Ah, so now we're told the boy has a brother. Not him, the little one. And there's the boy sitting on the nail keg at the back of the room. Okay. In patched and faded jeans, even too small for him, telling us what? Or emphasizing what? Their poverty. He's outgrown these pants. You know, that cuff that should reach down to where a shoe would be, but he doesn't have any shoes, is up mid-calf level. Okay? And they've been patched many times. What else? With straight, uncombed brown hair, eyes gray and wild as storm scud, he saw the men between himself and the table part like the Red Sea. Okay? And the boy doesn't feel the floor as he starts walking forward. It's like he's floating. It's like he's in another world. His mind is not aware of his situation, his surroundings. But the boy thinks he aims for me to lie. Who's the he? Mr. Harris? The justice of the peace? No. He thought again with that frantic grief and despair. What's the frantic grief and despair? The old fierce pool of blood. Who's the he? His father. He wants me to lie. And I will have to do it. The justice asks the boy, what's your name, boy? Colonel Sartorius Snopes. Eh? Justice is a little hard of hearing. Talk louder. Colonel Sartorius. In Faulkner's mythology, in his mythical world of Yoknapatawpha County, Mississippi, and in other parts of the Deep South, he has this character named Colonel Sartorius, who's revered. Confederate colonel. Okay? Powerful, landowning, all that kind of stuff. So the boy is named after this guy. It'd be like, Stonewall Jackson, and you name your kid Stonewall. not his real name, but you get the idea, okay? I reckon anybody named for Colonel Sartoris in this country can't help but tell the truth. In other words, boy, you better tell the truth, or you won't be worth your name. Okay? And the boy thinks, enemy, enemy. Who does he think is the enemy? The justice of the peace. Okay? And we're told, and for a moment, he could not see that the justice's face was kindly. So what has our narrator just done? The boy thinks, enemy! And the narrator says, not an enemy. Look at the facial expression the justice has when he looks at this boy. He's looking at him with kindness. Nor discern that his voice was troubled. It's like the justice almost chokes up when he says to Mr. Harris, the man who's bringing the charge against Sardi's father, do you want me to question this boy? What does the question really mean? I mean, surface level, it means exactly what it said. Do you really want me to question him? What's the deeper level? Are we told how old the boy is yet? Nope. We will in a couple pages. Do you really want me to put this boy on a witness stand and make him do what? Testify against his father? A prosecutor cannot compel testimony, for example, of a wife against her husband, or husband against her wife. I think the law now also applies that way to children. You can't compel a child to testify against his or her father. But he could hear during the subsequent long seconds while there was absolutely no sound, save that of quiet and intent breathing, as if he had swung outward at the end of a grapevine over a ravine, and at the top of the swing had been caught in a prolonged instant of mesmerized gravity, weightless in time. Notice we're told the boy can hear. He just doesn't catch the tone of kindness. There's a pause. How do we know there's a pause? The image of the boy on the end of a rope swing, hanging from a tree out over a creek, and you get the top of the swing, and you let go, and it's like, before you fall. He's at that moment. No! Mr. Harris says violently, damnation, send him out of here. And now, whoosh, time for rushes back. And the boy's like, whew. So, the justice says, this case is closed. I can't find against you, Snopes. That is, I can't declare you guilty. Why? He doesn't have proof. There's not a photograph of Snopes setting a match to the hay. But I can give you advice. Leave this country and don't come back. This country just means this area. Get out of here. Be gone by sunset, you know. And his father speaks for the first time. I aim to. I don't figure to stay in a country among people who, and whatever he says, we're told it's unprintable. That'll do. Take your wagon, get out of this country before dark. And his father turns and the boy follows. Notice, the stiff black coat, the wiry figure walking a little stiffly from where a Confederate provost man's musket ball had taken him in the heel on a stolen horse 30 years ago. So what are we told about his father right there? One, he walks with a limp. Why? He was shot in the heel. Why? He was a horse thief. 19th century, stealing a horse wasn't like stealing a car today. A car is not necessarily your livelihood today. A horse, it was. It was everything. That's about the highest crime you could, other than raping someone's wife or daughter or sister or mother or something like that. Stealing a horse, that's pretty much, get shot in the back for that. Okay. Notice whose horse he stole it, or from whom he stole it. A Confederate soldier. Makes you think, oh, well, maybe he's a Yankee then. Okay? Nope. Followed the two backs now because his brother has gotten up also. So now his father and brother are walking ahead of him. The boy's behind him. And they get outside. They go down the sagging steps of the general store, we're told, in the mild May dust. Notice a little detail about the setting. It's the spring, late spring. Okay? And somebody says, barn burner. And what does the boy do? Not the father or the brother. The boy acts out of this. The old fierce pull of blood. You called my daddy up. And he goes to punch whoever said that. Okay? Feeling no blow, feeling no shock when his head struck the earth. So the kid gets decked. Why doesn't he feel it? Adrenaline. Anger. That's what somebody said about his father. Okay? Father picks him up. Get in the wagon, you know. So, we find out where the wagon is sitting. The boy gets there. And we're told his two hulking sisters. What does it mean that they're hulking? These are big girls. Okay? Later, they're going to be described as bovine, like cows. His two hulking sisters in their Sunday dresses, and his mother and her sister. So this is the family. We've got the father, Abner, the youngest son, Colonel Sartoris, called Sarky, two sisters, brother, so there's 4 children, mother, and the mother's sister. Okay? 4 children, 3 adults, total of 7. He gets into the wagon. What do we see? The battered stove, the broken beds and chairs, the clock inlaid with mother of pearl, which didn't work, stopped at some 14 minutes past 2 o'clock of a dead and forgotten day and time, which had been his mother's dowry. That's the one thing she brought to the marriage. She's crying. The father says, get back. He's hurt. I've got to get some money. Get back. He gets in. Okay. Strikes the horse. And they go. The 2 mules. And they go. And his father strikes the mules, we're told. Paragraph 20, a couple lines down. 2 savage blows with the peeled willow, but without heat. Savage. These are hard hits, but without heat. What does that mean? How can you hit something hard, but without heat? The heat implies emotion or feeling. He's not angry. He just beats them with the willow switch to get them to move. But there's no, even in the way I said beats them, implies, this forceful intention. No? Okay. Why? It was not even sadistic, we're told. It was exactly that same quality which in later years would cause his descendants, Abner's descendants, to overrun the engine before putting a motor car in motion, striking and reining back in the same movement. The wagon goes on, the store with its crowd of people goes away off in the distance, and the boy thinks, as they make turn around a curve, forever. Forever what? Maybe he's done, satisfied now that he doesn't finish his thought. Now that he's what? Burn the barn down? Mother asked, does hurt? No, you don't hurt. Let me be. Can't you wipe some of the blood off? I'll wash tonight. Let me be, I tell you. Notice they don't speak correct, proper English. Okay? So the wagon goes on. They stop that night, middle of nowhere. Father takes a couple of logs, pieces of wood, out of a split rail fence, and starts a fire. What kind of fire does he start? Does he start a nice big fire for them all to warm up around? Nope. It's just a little tiny fire. And we're told, page 408, top paragraph, just before then, the boy doesn't know where they're going. None of them ever did or ever asked, because it was always somewhere like a house of sorts waiting for them, a day or 2 days or even 3 days away. Like his father had already arranged to make a crop on another farm before he died. Notice what the boy cannot say to himself. Before his father what? Burned a barn. He can't admit, my father's a barn burner. My father's a pyromaniac. My father's batshit crazy. Which he is, okay? He planned this. He's already got a place for us to live before he even burned that last part. He, the father, always did. And then we get this sentence. There was something about his wolf-like independence and even courage when the advantage was at least neutral, which impressed strangers. So let's just talk about that part of the sentence. Wolf-like independence. Are wolves independent animals? No, they're not. They're pack animals. That is why when we have a single terrorist incident, what is that person always described as? A lone wolf. Not part of a pack. If they're part of a pack, then they have a cell. If there's a cell, then there's a lot more danger involved. But a lone wolf is a wolf that has had what happened to it? Why do you have lone wolves? Not people, actual wolves. They violate the laws of the pack. They are wolves that are kicked out of the pack because they're dangerous to the pack. Notice what we're being told about Abner. He's dangerous to society. Okay? So there was something about his wolf-like independence and even courage when the advantage was at least neutral, which impressed strangers. Strangers, people who didn't know any better, would look at Abner and go, look at that guy. Ooh, he's tough. He's strong. He's independent-minded. He's going to do what he's going to do. Okay? As if they, these strangers, got from his latent, ravening ferocity. What does that phrase mean? Well, ferocity, we all know. Ferocious, right? Ravening. What does it mean to be ravenous? Starving. Hungry. Really hungry. Okay? Latent. Ravening is cannot be satiated, cannot be satisfied. Ferocity. This is the guy who gets in a fight and doesn't stop when the other person is subdued. This is the guy who gets in a fight and beats the other person's head till there's no face left. Okay? But this ravening ferocity is latent. What does latent mean? Anybody ever know someone, maybe you're one of these people, you don't have to admit it, know someone who has what's called a short fuse? It's just, it doesn't take much to set that person off. That is Abner. Latent means it's just beneath the surface. What's the problem with someone with a short fuse?
Get into a lot of situations.
You don't know what's going to set that person off. Okay? Okay? As if they got from his latent ravening ferocity not so much a sense of dependability as a feeling that his ferocious conviction in the rightness of his own actions would be of advantage to all those whose interest lay with his. In other words, if we can turn him to work on our side, then the latent ravening ferocity would benefit us. But the only people who think that about him are what? Strangers. People who come to know him say, leave this place and don't come back. They know what kind of person he is. So they camped that night, they have the fire. It's a small fire. The boy never thinks about it, and then we're told later on he will think about it. Middle of the next paragraph. Older, the boy might have remarked this and wondered why not a big one? Why should not a man who had not only seen the waste and extravagance of war, but who had in his blood an inherent, voracious prodigality with material not his own? An inherent, voracious prodigality. Prodigality means to be liberal, to be extremely generous. But this prodigality is what? With stuff that isn't his. What does he seemingly like to do? Or finds himself forced to do, he might say. Steal. What else? Burn other people's barns down. Does he burn his own barn down? Does he burn his own home? No. Okay? Then the boy might have thought, again, off in the future, that was the reason. That niggard blaze, niggard means cheap, Niggard, has nothing to do with Nigger. It means cheap or tight-fisted is an even better way of putting it. Everybody in here knows somebody who wouldn't loan you $1, even if they had $500 in their wallet. Just cheap SOBs, okay? That's what's being described here. That niggard, that little tiny fire that he lights, what could he do? He could take all those boards from the fence and have a rip-roaring blaze, and everybody would be nice and warm. No. But that blaze was the living fruit of nights passed during those 4 years in the woods, hiding from all men, blue or gray. What 4 years did he spend hiding from men in blue and gray? Civil War. Whose side did he fight on? He fought on his own. Why? Because he's a lone wolf. Why is he hiding from blue and gray? He doesn't agree with either side, and because he's stealing. They both want to kill him. With his strings of horses, captured horses, he called them. The implication is he's not stealing just from the south. He's not stealing just from the north. He steals from both sides. Older still, that is, when the boy is now gray-haired, he might have divined the true reason that the element of fire spoke to some deep mainspring of his father's being. The element of fire reaches into his father's heart, as the element of steel or powder spoke to other men. Steel, swords, powder. In other words, fire was what for him? A weapon. It's a weapon of choice. Just like a sword was for some men, or a gun is for some men, as one weapon for the preservation of integrity. Who he is in his deep innermost being. Else breath were not worth the breathing and hence to be regarded with respect and used with discretion. You only use fire for what? You only use a sword for what? You only use a handgun or rifle for what? For dealing with your enemies. You don't use it for heating. But the boy doesn't think that now. So they're camping, and the father goes up to him, says, "You were fixing to tell them. You would have told them." The boy doesn't answer, but he gets smacked upside the head. Flat of his hand, side of the head, hard. In other words, it's a really hard, but without heat. There's no anger. What does fire produce? Heat. There's no fire in this strike. Why? Because his father only uses fire for one purpose. That's for destruction. Answer me. Yes. In other words, I would have told the truth. Go back up to that paragraph. After you were fixing to tell them. The father says to the boy, "You're getting to be a man. You got to learn." In other words, I'm going to learn you about being a man now. You got to learn to stick to your own blood, or you ain't going to have any blood to stick to you. You think either of them, any man there this morning would? Would what? Would stick with the boy. What is the father now saying in relation to what the boy experienced that morning and to what the narrator told us? What did the narrator tell us about both Mr. Harris and the justice of the peace? These men were both kind. The father doesn't see that. He says, neither of those men would have stuck with you. So you got to stick to your blood, or your blood won't stick to you, meaning they won't come to your aid or defense. Don't you know all they wanted was a chance to get at me because they knew I had them beat? Okay? So put yourself in Abner's mind. What does Abner think was the result of the trial that morning? He won. Mr. Harris isn't moving his family 3 days away. Abner is. In Abner's logic, he's the victor out of that previous conflict. And yet he's the one who's had to pick up his family and move 2 or 3 days away. Later, 20 years later, the boy tells himself, if I had said they wanted only truth, justice, he would have hit me again. But now he doesn't say anything. Answer me, yes. Get on to bed, be there tomorrow. So they get to the place the next day. Okay? So this one's only 2 days away. And they stop before Paintless 2-room house. It's not 2-bedroom, it's 2 rooms. 1 room for sleeping, the other room for cooking and eating. Identical almost with the dozen others it had stopped before, even in the boy's 10 years. So now we're told the boy is 10 years old, and they've moved how many times in that 10 years? 12. Dad seems to have trouble holding a job. Okay? And again, as on the other dozen occasions, his mother and aunt got down and began to unload the wagon. All those 2 sisters and his father and brother had not moved. One of the sisters, likely it ain't fitting for hogs. Nevertheless fit it will, and you'll hog it, you'll like it, says the father. Get out of them chairs, help your ma. 2 big sisters got down, 2 sisters got down, big, bovine, etc. Okay? So the father tells the eldest son to do something, and he tells the youngest son, you, come with me. And his mother says, Abner? His father pauses, looks back, Reckon I'll have a word with the man named beginning tomorrow, owning me body and soul for the next 8 months. What does that mean, owning me body and soul? It's telling us what his job is. He's a sharecropper. What do sharecroppers do? They agree, let's say this is a plot of land. Let's say this is 20 by 20 acres. So 400 acres. You can make it bigger or smaller. They agree to work that land, all of that land, and in payment for doing that, they get the produce or the results of a small part of that land. Okay? So let's say it's 10 acres by 10 acres, and let's say this is 1 acre by 1 acre. Okay? So out of that 100 acres that he's going to plow and seed and everything, he gets what is produced by 1 acre of that land. That's what he gets to keep. He sells some to get money, etc. The other, is to support the family. 99 acres produce go to the person whose land it is. Okay? So he gets a share of the crop. That's where the name comes from. All right? So they go back down the road, turn off it, long description, page 409. As they make their way up this drive to a house, and the boy thinks to himself, middle of that page, when he sees the house, okay, there's a gate before they even get to it, a gate standing on these 2 big pillars, and there's this big, broad drive. And the boy thinks, they are safe from him. People whose lives are a part of this peace and dignity are beyond his touch. He no more to them than a buzzing wasp. My daddy's a bug. In other words, capable of stinging for a little moment, but that's all. The spell of this peace and dignity, rendering even the barns and stable and cribs which belong to it impervious to the puny flames he might contrive. And to get an idea of the house that they're looking at, look at the picture on page 405 of Faulkner's home, called Rowan Oak. Okay? Got a driveway lined with trees, big white antebellum house at the end of the drive. Okay? And notice this, the peace and joy ebbing for an instant. He's filled with this for a moment. They keep making their way, and the boy notices, as they walk down that driveway, up ahead, there's a pile of horse droppings. And his father's walking, and he drags that one heel, and his father could veer to the left or veer to the right to go around the horse droppings. But instead, he goes in, and he drops that heel that's injured right in the middle of the droppings. So he gets horse dung all over his boot. They make their way up to the house. And the boy thinks maybe he will feel it. Maybe he will feel, he can't do anything. They get there, father bangs on the door, servant answers the door, get away. The woman of the house comes down, the man, Abner, has stepped in, and he has stepped on this pale, round rug. She tells him to get out and to wipe his feet next time he comes in. And he's standing, both feet, middle of the rug, it's pale, and he turns. And he pivots on his good leg and drags the bad leg, which has horse crap on it, around like that, and then leaves. What has he just done to the rug? Semicircular smear of crap on it. Ruins it. They go back. Father makes some comments about the kind of sweat that had to build that house. Okay? go back home to what is their home, and somebody rides up with the rug. Tells them to clean it. Okay? Abner says, I'll do it. The wife offers. Abner says, I'll do it. How does he clean the rug? He does clean it. What was he told to do? Get the stain out. He does. As a matter of fact, the stain is no longer there. The only problem is there's a new problem with the rug as a result of how he cleans it. He cleans it with lye soap. Lye is an acid. So that burns the rug. What else? He takes a field stone, piece of stone from the field, to scrub the stain. And he ruins it. But the stain is no longer there. So his defense is no stain. You know, I did what I was told. I wasn't told, remove the stain and return the rug in the condition it was before you smeared horse dung on it. Okay? So, let's see here. I know we've only got a couple minutes. Page 413. We have a new trial. Okay? The man whose rug he ruined, Major Despain, charges Abner, says it's a $100 rug, but you'll never see $100 in all of your life. So I'm going to charge you to fix it. All right? Bottom of 413, the justice of the peace, different justice of the peace because they're in a different county, tells Abner Snopes, I'm going to find against you, Mr. Snopes. I'm going to find you were responsible for the injury to the rug. But 20 bushels of corn, that is, 20 bushels of corn out of the plot you will farm for yourself, seems a little high for a man in your circumstances to have to pay. Major Despain claims it cost $100. October corn will be worth about 50 cents. If Major Despain can stand a loss of $95 on something he paid cash for, you can stand a $5 loss that you haven't earned yet. Okay? So, out of all of the corn that he will get from the land he's farming for himself, he now has to come up with 20 bushels of corn. Bushels, pretty big sized basket, all right? I hold you in damages to Major Despain to the amount of 10 bushels. Major Despain wants 20 bushels, all right? Court is adjourned. They get ready to leave. We'll stop there. We'll pick up and finish this pretty quickly on Wednesday. Have A Good Man Is Hard to Find read for Wednesday. All right, have a good day.